DaviePHD's Jargonbusters, episode 10, Wednesday the 9th of December 2020. If you watch the news, it's full of political jargon you may not fully understand. But what do all these terms actually mean? In these videos I'm going to bust the jargon and explain these things in terms we all get. This week I've been asked to explain the abbreviation OECD. It stands for the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's an international economic organisation with 37 member states, founded in 1961 to stimulate economic progress and trade. It's a forum of countries describing themselves as committed to democracy, the market economy, and it provides a platform to compare policy experiences, seek answers to common problems, identify good practice and coordinate domestic and international policies of its members. Generally, OECD member states are high-income economies with a very high Human Development Index and are regarded as developed countries. As of 2017, OECD member countries collectively comprised 62% of global GDP. The OECD is an official United Nations observer. A little bit of history. The Organisation for European Economic Cooperation, the OEEC, was formed in 1948 to administer American and Canadian aid within the framework of the Marshall Plan for the reconstruction of Europe after World War II. The organisation started its operations in 1948. After the Marshall Plan ended, the OEEC focused on economic issues. In the 1950s, the OEEC started negotiations aimed at setting up a European Free Trade Area, the genesis of the European Economic Community and latterly the European Union. By the end of the 1950s, with the rebuilding of Europe effectively complete, some leading countries felt that the OEEC had outlived its usefulness, but it could be adapted to fulfil a more global mission. In January 1960, a resolution was reached to create a body that would deal not only with European and Atlantic economic issues, but devise policies to assist less developed countries. The reconstituted organisation would bring the US and Canada, who were already OEEC observers, on board as full members. It would also set to work straight away in bringing in Japan, and it would become the OECD we know today. The convention was signed in December 1960, and the OECD officially superseded the OEEC in September 1961. It consisted of the European founder countries, the United States and Canada, 3 other European countries, the Netherlands, Luxembourg and Italy. During the next 12 years, Japan, Finland, Australia and New Zealand also joined the organisation, and as other events have unfolded, other nations have joined, particularly after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So, does it work? Well, yes, it does work. As an advisory body, it shares lessons and has assisted in the rebuilding of Europe after World War II. It's increased economic cooperation globally and helped nations recover from the fall of the Eastern Bloc, and shared lessons with developing nations and how to become economically successful. As it is non-authoritative, it is seen as neutral by people around the world, so its economic assessments and guidance are seen as trustworthy. So, what are all these OECD averages people hear about? Well, as all nations in the OECD feed financial data into the organisation, it serves as a good measure of how a government is doing and offers a useful comparison among nations. With 37 of the most developed economies in the world in the OECD comparing data, an OECD average is a useful yardstick for any government to compare itself to others, to set a target for or demonstrate actual improvement. We often hear the OECD average pension cited in the independence debate. So I'll go through a few OECD nations and their state pension provision. Netherlands, where it equals 80% of average income. The OECD average is 63% of average income, and the UK is 29% of average income. So Independent Scotland said it would adopt the OECD average as its minimum state pension, and it would thereby double or take home state pension when we get round to collecting it. So in summary, the OECD and its predecessor, the OEEC, have been a force for good in the world. They've been instrumental in rebuilding Europe and laying the groundwork for the EEC, the EU, and helping the former communist nations adapt to capitalism. They've achieved this by being politically neutral and not becoming authoritative like the United Nations. So folks, that's it for the OECD. If there's any other political jargon driving you nuts, let me know and I'll bust it. Otherwise, I'd ask you all a question and comment on the Facebook page, DaviePHD.